12 years. That's how long I've been gone. 12 years since I vanished off the face of the earth without a trace, without a word. I never called, never explained, not even to my own parents. I became a ghost because I had to, because if I didn't, I would have lost what little of myself I had left. I didn't run to escape something simple like a midlife crisis or burnout or whatever excuse people spoon-feed themselves to stay sane. No, I ran because staying would have meant rot, soul rot. And now I was back, standing on the front steps of my childhood home, gripping a truth that had festered in silence for over a decade. My hand hesitated before knocking. The wood felt unfamiliar, and yet it was the same door I'd walked through hundreds of times growing up. Before things shattered. Before I became a man who couldn't recognize his own reflection. The door creaked open slowly, revealing my mother. Older, thinner, like life had worn her down just enough to show. Her eyes locked onto mine, confusion spiraling into recognition. The breath she took caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered, one trembling hand reaching for the doorframe like the house itself might collapse. My father appeared behind her, taller than I remembered, stiffer, like every year had turned his spine more rigid. "I need to talk," I said, flat, no room for pleasantries. No hugs, no questions yet. Just, let me say this. They didn't speak. They just stepped aside. I entered the house like stepping into a museum where everything still existed but nothing felt alive. The photos on the wall, the same ones from years ago, stared at me like ghosts. We sat in the living room, the silence heavy, my father perched on the armrest like he wasn't sure this was real. "I left because of her," I said. "And you both deserve to know what really happened." Still, nothing. My mother's hand covered her mouth like she was trying to stop herself from breathing too loudly. She didn't just cheat. She dismantled me piece by piece until I didn't even know if I was imagining the whole thing. And when I found out, when I finally saw the truth with my own eyes, I did something I never thought I would do. I walked away without looking back. I could feel my throat tightening, but I pressed on. It wasn't the kind of affair you whisper about behind closed doors. It wasn't some pathetic fling with a coworker. It was something darker, more cruel, something deliberate. She wanted me to find out. I think she planned it. My father's jaw clenched. That was the first sign of life I got from him. My mother blinked slowly like her mind was playing catch-up. And it wasn't just once. Or twice. It was every time I trusted her. Every time I left the house, every weekend I thought she was at her sister's. Every moment I thought we were just going through a rough patch, she was somewhere else. With him. I looked up at them. "You remember that night, don't you? When I called you. One call. You picked up, I said I needed help. Then I hung up. That was the night. That's the night I came home early." They remembered. I could tell by the shift in the air. My mom leaned forward, hands shaking. "What did you see?" she asked, voice brittle. I looked at the floor, then at her, then back at the floor. I walked in on them in our kitchen. Our kitchen. Not a hotel. Not a car. Not some desperate hideaway. Our kitchen. They didn't even stop when I walked in. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Well, I guess now you know." Like it was nothing. Like I was interrupting her coffee. He didn't even flinch. My mother let out a sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. My father looked away, his eyes staring through the wall like he could drill a hole into another reality. And it wasn't just the cheating. I added, my voice sharper now. It was what came after. The lies. The twisted games. The way she turned everything back on me. Like I made her do it. Like I was boring. Unambitious. Too focused on work. Not romantic enough. Not man enough. I paused and let the silence stretch. It wasn't for drama. It was because saying it still made my stomach churn. She called me a ghost before I ever disappeared. Said I had no presence. That even if I left, no one would notice. I guess she was almost right. My mother covered her face with her hands. My father was completely still. That's why I left. Not just her. I left all of it. Everything. I erased myself. Because after that night, I realized I had already been erased. I just needed to catch up. I stood up slowly. And I'm not here for forgiveness. Or comfort. I'm here because I finally decided it's time to let people know what really happened. I didn't abandon my life. I was pushed out of it. And now it's time you both know the truth. Their silence was louder than any scream. I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, my father finally spoke, just one word. Who? I stopped. I didn't turn around when I answered. You won't believe me. Then I walked out the door. I didn't drive straight back to the motel after that. My hands were too unstable for the wheel, my mind buzzing like a swarm of hornets. I parked near the old middle school playground and just sat there in my car, staring at the rusted swing sets, trying to breathe like a normal human being. I hadn't said the name. I knew they were both thinking it, circling around it like it was radioactive. And they were right too. Because saying that name out loud would tear apart more than just my marriage, it would rip through the very roots of our family tree. His name was Nate. Yeah, that Nate. My cousin. My childhood best friend. The guy who introduced me to her at that bonfire all those years ago. The one who toasted our engagement and gave a speech about how we were made for each other. The guy who took me to the emergency room after my car accident, who called himself my brother in every way that counted. That's who she was with. Repeatedly. And proudly. But the thing that still claws at my insides isn't that she chose him, it's how. How easily. How methodically. Like she'd been waiting for the right opportunity to switch lives, to upgrade. After I caught them, I didn't explode. I didn't scream or throw things. I just stood there like a man watching his house burn down from the sidewalk, knowing the insurance won't cover a damn thing. She leaned against the kitchen counter with her arms crossed like it was a casual Wednesday. You gonna say something? She asked. I couldn't. Nate, he actually had the gall to look annoyed. He sighed like I had walked in and ruined their evening plans. He didn't even try to explain. Didn't offer one word. Just stared at me, then at her, then back at me like I was the problem for standing there. You weren't supposed to be home, she said next, like that was the real issue. And the worst part? I nodded. I actually nodded. As if I was apologizing for catching them. I walked out the front door and kept walking until my legs gave out somewhere near the edge of town. I didn't even bring my phone. I left it on the kitchen table beside the takeout containers they'd probably ordered before getting busy on the counter where I used to cook her breakfast every Sunday. Back in the car now, I sat in that silence again, 13 years older but still stuck in that moment. I remember calling my parents from a payphone that night. My voice was wrecked. I don't even remember what I said. I think it was something like, I'm done. I'm not okay. And then I hung up. That was the last time they heard my voice until this morning. I thought about telling them everything today. Every filthy, humiliating detail. But there was something poisonous about saying it all out loud in one sitting. I needed them to chew on it, to let it rot in their minds for a bit. The truth is, Nate wasn't just some random betrayal. He was family. And she didn't just break vows, she invited him into the sacred spaces of our life, like desecrating a church with someone wearing your clothes. I wasn't done. This wasn't just a truth dump and leave situation. I was back for a reason. And if they thought I disappeared forever to hide, they were wrong. I disappeared to return when the silence would be loudest. When it would hurt the most. The next morning I was at Nate's house before sunrise. I didn't call. Didn't text. Just stood on the porch like a ghost from a life he thought he buried 12 years ago. The house was exactly the same. Same tacky red door. Same dying hanging plant. Same wind chime that played that fake cheerful tune like it belonged in a horror movie. I knocked once. Hard. No answer. Then I knocked again, faster, louder. I wanted him to open it. I wanted to see the exact moment recognition hit his face. I wanted to watch his stomach drop. Took a full minute before I heard slow footsteps. Then the sound of a lock clicking. The door cracked open and there he was. Older, sure. Thicker in the face. Still smug, though. Still that same casual confidence he always wore like a second skin. He didn't say anything for the first few seconds. He just stared. Blinking like he'd seen something he once buried and hoped never resurfaced. Morning, cousin, I said flatly. He opened the door fully, expression unreadable. Well, I'll be damned, he said. I walked past him without asking. Inside smelled like cheap cologne and burnt coffee. The living room was almost insultingly familiar. Same couch where we used to crash after late-night parties. Same TV cabinet we built together one winter. Same damn rug I spilled bourbon on the night he told me he'd always have my back. I turned to face him. You look like hell, he said, voice trying to be light, but I heard the crack underneath. Been there. I replied. Thought I'd pay a visit. He rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. Why now? I tilted my head. You really gonna play dumb after everything? I'm not playing anything, man, he said. But his eyes darted, just once, to the hallway. Is she here? I asked. He didn't answer. Of course she is, I whispered, almost laughing. You really never stopped, huh? After all this time. She left you, he said quickly. That wasn't on me. That sentence. That perfect little manipulation. That's what he was good at. Always reframing things. Always bending facts just enough to look clean while standing in the dirt. She didn't leave me, I snapped. She discarded me, like trash. And you helped. You set it up. Don't lie. He exhaled slowly. What do you want? There it was. What do I want? I repeated, stepping closer. I want you to hear it. From me. I want you to know you didn't win. You just poisoned everything you touched. You think you got a prize? No. You're living with the wreckage of a woman who smiled in my face while stabbing me in the back with your name on the blade. A sound from the hallway. I turned. And there she was. Her. She looked older, yeah. But she still had that same calm, glassy look she always wore when she was about to lie. She didn't look surprised to see me. That part twisted something in my chest. She crossed her arms, leaned against the doorframe, and said it like she'd been rehearsing it for years. So, back from the dead? I just stared at her. You here to cry or scream? She asked. Because we've got about 15 minutes before I have to leave for work. Like that. Like none of it mattered. Like everything I carried in silence for over a decade was just a mild inconvenience in her Tuesday morning. I walked up to her slowly, stopping just far enough away to keep myself steady. I came to tell you both something, I said quietly. You didn't ruin me. Not forever. You delayed me. You humiliated me. But you didn't end me. She blinked, still no reaction. Nate said nothing. Coward. And guess what? I said louder now, voice sharp. Everyone's going to know. Your coworkers. Your neighbors. Your friends. Your kids if you ever poison another generation with your names. You think the past dies when people go silent. It doesn't. It festers. And then it explodes. She smirked. That sounds like a threat. No, I said, stepping back. It's a promise. See you both soon. I left their house without another word. But it wasn't over. The real game was just beginning. 2 days later, I stood at the edge of the town's community center during a fundraiser event my mother had dragged my father to for years. They were both there now, dressed up, pretending not to be, holding back the full body shock of seeing me alive and casually sipping bad punch by the fruit table. The place was crawling with people who hadn't seen my face in over a decade. Familiar ones. Curious ones. Some who looked at me like I was a ghost who owed them an apology for not staying dead. But none of that mattered, because they were about to hear the truth. You don't disappear for 12 years and then reappear with secrets unless you're ready to detonate them. And I wasn't just ready, I was wired. Wired by grief, betrayal, silence, and the absolute collapse of the image everyone thought they knew. I had already sent out the emails. No subject lines. No introductions. Just one sentence, you should know who she really is before you donate another dime to her cause. Attached, a private link to a folder with screenshots, photos, timelines. Dated, timestamped, backed up 3 different ways. Not revenge porn. Nothing vulgar. But enough to set fire to every carefully curated version of her life she'd rebuilt after I left. Because now she wasn't just the woman who cheated. She was the pillar of the community, the organizer, the school volunteer, the woman who held wine nights with the other moms and spoke on healing after toxic relationships. Oh yeah, I had seen the videos. Her standing up there, crying on cue, telling strangers how she overcame emotional abandonment and narcissistic neglect. She rewrote our story and I let her. For 12 years. But now the book was mine. I saw her enter the center around 7:05. Same fake smile. Same calculated walk, like the floor belonged to her. Nate wasn't with her, not this time. Probably smart. Or cowardly. I watched her shake hands with 2 people, take a glass of wine from the bar, and almost make it to the stage before someone tapped her shoulder. The look on her face changed in degrees. Confusion first, then annoyance, then panic, because the whispers started almost immediately. Not loud, but precise. Surgical. One man showed his phone to another. A woman excused herself from the conversation mid-sentence. Someone else stared, wide-eyed, then turned slowly toward her like they were seeing her for the first time. She tried to keep smiling. I stepped out from the crowd. She saw me, and for the first time since I'd returned, her composure cracked. Just a flicker. Just a half-second twitch of her jaw. But it was enough. I knew her. I knew her better than anyone, and I saw the structure buckle inside her. She walked toward me. I stayed exactly where I was. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed under her breath, stopping inches from my face. "Set the record straight," I said. "You've had 12 years to tell your version. Now it's my turn." "You think anyone will believe you?" she sneered. "You're the man who vanished. You're the one who ran away like a coward." "No," I replied. "I'm the man who survived you." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maybe she didn't expect me to be calm. Maybe she thought I'd scream or beg or crack under her rehearsed outrage. But I didn't. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a man who's already lost everything and is finally unafraid of truth. "Everyone knows now," I said quietly. "And not just the affair. The gaslighting. The lies. The way you told your friends I was unstable. How you repackaged our history into a tragic fairy tale with you as the victim. It's over. You won't win," she said, voice trembling now, lower than before. "I don't need to win," I said. "I just needed to make sure you don't keep lying." And then I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for applause. Didn't look back. Because the war wasn't about spectacle. It was about reclaiming a voice she'd tried to erase. And that was only the dot. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was restless or scared of fallout, but because the silence finally felt mine. For the first time in 12 years, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. Felt like power. Like every moment I spent hidden, every word I swallowed, every breakdown I endured alone, had crystallized into a kind of ruthless clarity. She thought I'd disappear again. She thought the confrontation at the event was the climax. No, that was the trigger. The next morning I made a list. Not out of spite, out of necessity. People she had lied to. People who defended her. People who thought I had abandoned her. That I was the flaky husband who couldn't handle the weight of real love. I was going to speak to every single one of them. Not to convince. Just to reveal. To show. I started with Valerie, her closest friend, maid of honor at our wedding, the one who, as I'd learned, had told everyone I was emotionally abusive. She was running a yoga studio downtown now, her life full of incense, pastel walls, and healing energy quotes on Instagram. I didn't ambush her. I booked a class, took off my shoes, sat through the full 45 minutes of downward dogs and forced mindfulness. And then, as everyone else filtered out, I walked up and said her name. She froze. She turned, saw me, and all the fake peace drained from her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I said. "I thought you were," she started, but I cut her off. "I know what you told people. About me. About her." Her lips parted, then closed again. I could see the spin forming in her head. "She told me," Valerie began, defensive now. "She lied," I said, sharper. "And you repeated it. You helped her bury me." "I didn't know," she snapped, voice cracking, eyes darting around. "She said you just left. That you were unstable. That she tried everything." "She staged it," I said coldly. "She made you her PR team while she was screwing Nate behind my back for months. You stood at our wedding and toasted a lie." She stepped back, guilt crashing over her face like a storm. "You believed her because it was easier than asking questions," I added. "And I get it. She's charming. Convincing. She cried on cue. But you didn't lose everything. You didn't walk into your own house and feel like a stranger in a crime scene." Valerie was shaking now, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." "That's not good enough," I said. "You don't get to not know anymore." And I left. Didn't yell. Didn't drag it out. Just dropped the weight of truth and walked away. Over the next week, I repeated that process. One name at a time. One conversation at a time. Not for vengeance, but to rebuild the ruins under my own control. People reacted differently. Some denied. Some cried. Some apologized like that could fix what they helped destroy. And then one night, I got the call. My mother. Her voice was shaky. She came by. I froze. She wanted to talk, Mom continued. To explain. To defend herself. She said you're unstable, that you're back to ruin her life. I waited. And then she added, I asked her one question. What? I asked her if she ever loved you. Silence. And she said, my mother whispered, she loved the idea of you. Not you. That silence, it landed different. Cold. Still. Final. I didn't even feel angry. Not anymore. Because that sentence was the clearest thing she'd ever said. It was never about love. It was about image. Convenience. A role I was supposed to play until I wasn't useful anymore. And now, I had taken back the script. The days that followed blurred together into a quiet unraveling. Not of me, but of everything she had built atop the ashes of my silence. Her little empire of sympathy, her curated persona, her pristine victimhood. It was all collapsing, one crack at a time. I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The truth was moving on its own now, whispered between neighbors, dissected in group chats, passed in fragments like pieces of a mirror everyone suddenly wanted to reassemble. I was walking downtown one afternoon, passing the coffee shop where she used to meet her friends to trade stories of how brave she'd been through her trauma, when someone called my name. Not angrily, not accusingly, just cautiously. It was Jeremy, an old coworker of mine, the one who once cornered me after work to say he hoped I was treating her right because she seemed so delicate. Back then, I smiled and nodded and said nothing. I let people think whatever they wanted. Not anymore. He jogged up to me awkwardly. Hey, man. You really back? I nodded once. Looks like it. He rubbed the back of his neck. Listen, I didn't know. About everything. Nobody did. I shrugged. You knew enough to pick a side. His face twisted. She said you disappeared. That you left her in the middle of a breakdown. She was the breakdown, I said flatly. That shut him up for a minute. She came to my office last week, he muttered. Tried to get me to talk to HR about your harassment campaign. She was crying, saying you were obsessed with destroying her. Of course she did. She never saw truth as a reckoning, just another narrative to manipulate. What did you do? I asked. I told her I didn't want to be involved, he said. But between us? People are talking. And not in her favor. He paused again, then added, it's kind of insane how much we all bought it. I didn't answer. Because yeah, it was insane. But that's how it works, right? The best liars never scream. They whisper. They bleed in front of an audience that doesn't know the wound is self-inflicted. Later that evening, I got another message. This time from her. A single line, we need to talk. Face to face. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I typed back, public place. No games. We met at the park. Same one where we used to walk our dog before she accidentally left the gate open and it got hit by a car while I was working overtime to cover her boutique bills. I remember she cried more about the vet bill than the actual dog. She was already there, sitting on the bench like a statue carved from ice. I sat without a word. She spoke first. I don't know what your endgame is here. No endgame, I said. Just balance. You think you're righteous? She snapped, voice low. You think airing our private life is noble? No, I said. But it's honest. Something you've never been. Her mouth twisted, but she didn't interrupt. You didn't just cheat, I continued. You erased me. Made me a villain in a story I didn't even get to read. You paraded your lies through every corner of this town, and people believed you. That's not just betrayal. That's demolition. She laughed bitterly. You think people won't forget all this in a month? I don't care if they do, I said. This isn't about them. It's about me. I know. You know. And now you don't get to pretend anymore. She fell silent. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, you should have fought for me. That sentence. A shard of glass in the throat. I stood up. I did. Every day. Until I realized I wasn't fighting for love, I was fighting to survive you. I walked away before she could answer. Let her sit with that. Let her rot in it. A week later, I got the letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. Handwritten. On the kind of stationery you only buy when you're trying to make a statement. No return address, but I knew the handwriting the moment I saw the first loop of the Y in my name. She'd written me letters before, back when we were still pretending the cracks in our marriage were just stress or communication issues. Letters that dripped with rehearsed vulnerability. Letters meant to control the narrative even when she wasn't in the room. This one was different, or at least it wanted to seem different. I opened it alone, sitting on the hood of my car, parked in the middle of nowhere. Just fields and wind. No eyes, no witnesses. It started like this. You've made your point. I hope you're proud of what you've done. Already, I could feel the manipulation woven into the ink. Subtle, poisonous. She was always good at making herself the injured party. Even now, I won't try to defend the affair. It happened. You saw it. I said things I shouldn't have. I made decisions that weren't fair to you. But you need to ask yourself why it was so easy to fall into someone else's arms. There it was. The twist. The suggestion that her betrayal wasn't an act of cruelty. It was a reaction. As if she'd tripped and landed in my cousin's bed because I wasn't providing the right emotional scaffolding. Nate understood me. He listened. You were always working, always distracted. I felt like a ghost in my own marriage. She used my words. The ones I whispered in desperation during the final months. The irony burned hot. You disappeared and I had to pick up the pieces alone. You don't know what that did to me. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in the field. You don't know what that did to you? I imagined her sitting at a clean desk, drafting this letter like it was a final essay, grading herself on how tragic she could sound. No apologies. No ownership. Just veiled blame layered beneath faux remorse. Despite everything, I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. You let bitterness define you. You let pain turn you into someone I barely recognize. That's what she couldn't stand, that I came back whole. That I didn't crawl. That I didn't beg. That I held her gaze and didn't flinch. Because I had become someone she didn't recognize. Someone who didn't need her approval to exist. I folded the letter back up and slid it into the glove box without a word. I didn't need to respond. That letter wasn't for me. It was her last attempt to rewrite the ending. But I'd already torn out the last page and written my own. Later that night, I ran into Nate. At the gas station of all places. I didn't expect it, wasn't planning some dramatic showdown. But there he was, standing next to his overpriced truck, looking like a man who had finally realized how much gasoline he'd poured over his own life. He looked at me, then looked away. But I walked right up. No more letters from her? I asked. He didn't answer. She still with you? I asked next, calm, casual. He hesitated. Not really. I smirked. You thought you were different, didn't you? His jaw tightened. I didn't think anything. It just happened. No, I said. You let it happen. You made it happen. You helped destroy something just because you could. You liked being wanted more than being loyal. He looked at the ground like it might offer him shelter. She always said you were too soft, I added. Guess now you know what that really meant. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't fight back. Because the truth was, he wasn't the villain. He was the mirror. Everything she hated in me was just a reflection of herself she couldn't unsee. And Nate? He was just another set of eyes too weak to turn away. I left him standing there with a full tank and an empty soul. And for the first time, I didn't feel hollow. I felt clean. I left town again. Not for good. This time it wasn't an escape. It was a choice. A deliberate pause. I packed light, booked a cabin a few hours north by the lake where I used to fish as a kid, and took with me only what mattered: my journals, my laptop, and the box. The box had been with me since before I left the first time. I almost tossed it a dozen times, but something always stopped me. Inside were pieces of a life I no longer lived: our wedding invitation, photos from trips where we both faked smiles, notes she'd written me in the early days when she was still pretending to love me properly. But there was something else in there too. Something I'd buried and forgotten. A voice recorder. A cheap little thing she bought me when I said I wanted to write a novel. To capture ideas on the go, she said. Back when she still pretended to care about my dreams. I hadn't used it since before everything fell apart. But as I sat on the creaky cabin floor, flipping through those yellowing photos, I pressed play. The voice that came through was mine. Younger. Hopeful. A version of me that still believed in forever. I was rambling about a story I wanted to write, something about a man who wakes up one day and realizes he's a supporting character in his own life. I turned it off after a minute, because I wasn't that man anymore. That's when the message came. Another one from her. No preamble this time. No apology. Just, they're turning on me. You happy now? I stared at it for a long time. The answer, surprisingly, wasn't easy. Was I happy? I thought I would be. I thought watching her life unravel would feel like vindication. But instead, it just felt inevitable. Not satisfying. Just fair. The kind of balance that comes after a long storm. Not because someone deserved to suffer, but because it was the only way to stop pretending sunshine had ever lived there. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled to the message I'd been ignoring for days. From her sister. Not a name I expected to see pop up. But there it was. A long paragraph. She said she knew. That she always knew, but felt powerless. That watching me vanish had haunted her more than she admitted. She even offered to talk. To meet. And for the first time in 12 years, I considered the possibility that not every bridge was burned. That maybe some people didn't pick sides, they just didn't know how to fight. I agreed to meet her. A diner. Neutral ground. Middle of the day. She walked in with cautious eyes, but not judgmental ones. She hugged me before I could stop her, and for a moment, I let it happen. Not because I forgave everything, but because some parts of me were too tired to keep holding the flame. We talked. For hours. She told me things I never knew. That my ex had been lying long before Nate. That she'd flirted with other people at our engagement party. That Shed said once, in confidence, she felt trapped and just needed to blow up her life to feel something. She was always going to break it, her sister said quietly. You were just the foundation. That line hit different, because she was right. I wasn't the target, I was the tool. The stage she stood on while auditioning for a better life. And when she got bored of the script, she lit the whole theater on fire. We sat in silence for a while. Then her sister looked at me and said something I didn't expect. You're not broken, you know? Just wounded. Wounds close. Fire doesn't. It didn't fix anything. It didn't heal 12 years in one lunch. But it mattered, because someone finally saw me without needing to erase her. When I got back to the cabin that night, I took the box outside, lit a fire in the pit, and one by one, I fed it every photo, every note, every fragment of a life that no longer belonged to me. But I didn't burn the recorder. I kept that, because my story wasn't over. 2 months passed. Enough time for the smoke to clear, for the whispers to become rumors, for the rumors to harden into truth. Her carefully constructed world had cracked in public. Not exploded, no, she'd never allow a dramatic fall. It was more like watching a statue crumble under its own weight, piece by piece, until the face eroded, and no one could remember why they admired it to begin with. She resigned from the community board. Quietly. No announcement, no farewell post. Her book club disbanded. The school dropped her as a volunteer. Her wine nights stopped. One by one, the social lights she basked in dimmed until all that was left was the shadow she'd cast across too many lives, including mine. I didn't rejoice. I didn't dance. Because something had shifted in me since the fire. Since I sat at that cabin, watching years of pain turn to ash, something inside me began rebuilding, not out of bitterness, but out of space. Space she no longer occupied. I stayed in town longer than I'd planned. People treated me differently now. Some still avoided eye contact. Some nodded, cautiously respectful. A few came up to say they were sorry for what they believed, for what they repeated, for not asking questions when it mattered. I didn't always accept it, but I didn't carry the weight of their silence anymore. And then, one night, I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I was sitting outside the bookstore, my spot now, a little bench under a tree where I read with a coffee, and no one bothered me. She walked by like a ghost passing through a memory, and I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller. Not physically, but something about her presence had collapsed. She noticed me, stopped, and for a second we just stared. No words, no insults, No fake smiles. Just two people who had survived the same fire from opposite sides. She walked toward me slowly. I didn't move. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey, I didn't expect to see you here." "I live here," I replied. "You just never noticed." She flinched at that. "Good. Truth has teeth. I've been thinking about what you said. About survival. About balance." I waited. "I don't know if I'll ever fix what I broke," she said, voice low, almost lost in the street noise. "I just wanted you to know. I think you were the only real thing in my life. And I destroyed it." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't lying. Not this time. But she wasn't asking for forgiveness either. She was saying goodbye to the last thread of who we had been. So I gave her the only thing left to give. "Yeah," I said. "You did." She stood there for another second. Maybe waiting for more. Maybe hoping I'd soften. I didn't. She turned. Walked away. And I let her go. Because this time she wasn't walking away from me. I had already left her long ago. I went back to my book. The sun dipped lower, painting gold across the pages. And for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't living in reaction to what she did. I wasn't trying to fix or prove or retaliate. I was just being free, alive. And that wasn't the end. That was a year later, I stood in front of a room full of strangers holding a microphone I never thought I'd touch. Not because I was chasing some dramatic finale or craving applause. But because a local writing group had asked me to speak, someone had passed along a few chapters of the memoir I'd been working on, the one I hadn't intended to share until it was finished. They asked me to talk about healing, about truth, about what happens when your life burns to the ground and you're the only one holding a bucket. I said yes. Not because I thought I had answers, but because for the first time in over a decade, I finally understood the question. The room was quiet. People sat with open notebooks and hesitant eyes, waiting for some polished story of redemption or forgiveness. I didn't give them that. Instead, I started with this. After my wife left me and everyone forgot about me, I returned after 12 years and revealed to my parents the real reason for my divorce and disappearance. That sentence hit the air like a gunshot in a chapel. People shifted. Someone gasped. One woman actually whispered, "Oh my God." And then I told them the rest. Not every gruesome detail, but the truth, stripped of drama, cut clean of blame. I told them how betrayal isn't just about someone choosing another body. It's about the slow, methodical erasure of your identity. The manipulation. The lies told behind your back that you didn't even know you needed to defend yourself from. I told them about silence, and how it can rot you if you don't give it a voice. I told them about returning, not to her, but to myself. About how confronting the past doesn't heal it, but it does stop it from dictating your future. And when I was done, I didn't wait for claps. I just looked around and said, if someone ever tries to rewrite your story without you, take the pen back. Afterward, people came up to me, one by one. Some hugged me. Some cried. A few just nodded and walked away like I'd held up a mirror they weren't ready for. But the one person I didn't expect to see was my father. He'd come alone. Waited until the room cleared out. Stood in the back the entire time silent. When he approached, he didn't say much. Just stood there, hands in his jacket pockets. Then finally he said, "You should have told us sooner. But I get why you didn't." I nodded. He paused, then added, "I'm glad you came back. Not for her. For you." That was it. That was everything. A week later, I got the final letter. Not from her. From a lawyer. A release of joint assets we'd never untangled. A clean break. Signed. Sealed. Done. I didn't throw a party. I took a walk. Alone. Through the same streets that once felt haunted. Now they felt quiet. And this time, quiet didn't mean pain. It meant peace. People think betrayal is the end of the world. But sometimes it's just the end of a lie. And the beginning of your real life. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this: I came back. And I didn't come back to fix anything. I came back to bury the past where it belonged, outside of me.